Hello everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So remember what I said at the beginning of the last episode about just having to pick a time to mash that record button and record a podcast, even though, the news cycle is just still not going to slow down? Holy crap! Did that ever prove to be true after I recorded the last episode, because there's so much that happened since then that that episode is almost antiquated. It's almost like a cute little picture of where we were at a very specific point in the news cycle. But yes, obviously it kept on going, and so I'm going to kind of do this a little differently than I normally do my weekly episodes. Normally, this episode would not be the roundup episode. Normally, I would do that later in the week. But so much has happened since the last episode that I want to go ahead and record this one quickly. We'll see how quickly that happens. But let's go ahead and start back kind of where we left off at the last episode, talking about the troop pullout of Syria and Afghanistan, which it does seem at this point is still on. Trump has kind of doubled down on this, and he's made several tweets to the effect that this is something that needed to happen a long time ago, never should have been there, blah, 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 blah. But, and that's to say, not to dismiss it. I mean, he's not incorrect. He's absolutely right. We did not need to be in Afghanistan. We certainly did not need to be in Syria. So, broken clock, right twice a day, and Trump's right on this one. But obviously, the absolute meltdown over the troop pullout has still continued in the media, in the chattering class, amongst the talking heads, amongst people on Twitter. And it's funny to look at it at this point because, first off, okay, this time 2 weeks ago, very, very few people knew that there were actually troops in Syria to begin with. So this whole news cycle has been finding out that there are troops in Syria, which the Washington Post, I think it was actually last Sunday or the Sunday before that, had put out a story about there being troops in Syria. But in this short time span, we went from it being public knowledge that there were troops in Syria to Donald Trump deciding to pull troops out of Syria, to everybody freaking the fuck out over pulling troops out of Syria, which, by the way, they didn't even realize were there, more than likely, until Trump announced that he was pulling them out of Syria. And it's what the hell? Why are you just found this information out? Why are you so angry about it? It's been wild to watch that. And I point out the Syrian troop withdrawal because I've seen some pushback on the Afghanistan troop withdrawal, but honestly, there's not. I mean, the Afghanistan troop withdrawal is a no-brainer. That should have been done a decade ago. So you can't really criticize him for that. I mean, that's you would just look fucking stupid. But everybody has freaked the hell out over the Syrian troop withdrawal. And the thing, I mean, there's been plenty of excuses. There's been, obviously, the things we discussed about last time about having to wait until there's no Iranian influence in Syria, which is never going to fucking happen. We have to wait until the region is stable, which, again, is never going to fucking happen. But the one that everybody kind of latched onto, and this is how you know that something ended up in a talking points memo somewhere, is when everybody starts talking about a really esoteric topic that nobody was even discussing before, and that's the Kurds. All of a sudden, we have to keep troops in Syria to protect the Kurds from Turkey. And I'm first of all, how many of these people even knew who the hell the Kurds were 15 minutes ago? Second of all, this is what you've latched onto. I mean, and yes, I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when, because I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. But when we pull out of Syria, yes, it is going to leave the Kurdish people vulnerable to Turkey coming in and trying to take over their territory. Okay, yes, that sucks. No, it is not a reason for us to keep troops in Syria. Our job, the U.S. military's job, is not to go to other countries to protect parcels of land for another group of people that are not Americans or not part of America. So it's not a reason to keep troops there. And what I have seen floated, and I've seen Trump kind of intimate on this, is the idea of obviously pulling the troops out of Syria and then leaning on Turkey diplomatically to try to get them to leave the Kurds alone, which is honestly the best option I can think of at this point. Because, like I said, this is not a reason to have boots on the ground in Syria. Like, it's just not. And if Turkey is our NATO ally, as they are supposed to be, then I do think that there is some level of expectation that they would be responsive to us asking politely, or maybe not so politely, to leave the Kurds the hell alone. But yeah, it's been interesting to watch this whole thing play out. And it's like, who the hell can possibly oppose pulling troops, especially out of Syria, which, by the way, the troops that are there are not even supposed to be there. It's unconstitutional. Congress has never approved it. And, like, this should be a no-brainer, just like pulling out of Afghanistan should be a no-brainer. But because it's Trump, and because Orange Man bad, obviously anything he does, even if you look at it from an objective standpoint, is a very good thing. Obviously, it must be bad. Like, there must be something going on. It must be, it's Putin. It's Putin and Russia. It's their fault. They're making Trump pull out of Syria because Russia runs the U.S. and Russia and Trump is a Putin puppet, don't you know? But there are obviously very valid reasons for us to be pulling out of Syria and out of Afghanistan. And like I mentioned in the last episode, Trump has wanted to do this for a long time. He campaigned on it. He's tried to do it before and I guess kind of talked out of it, which leads into my next point that I want to make about this, and that is the seemingly impulsiveness of the decision. And like I just mentioned, it's not like this came out completely out of left field from the perspective of looking at how Trump sees this, because, like I said, he has mentioned this several times before that he wanted to do this. And every time he has consulted with his advisors and his Secretary of Defense and everybody, they've all kind of talked him out of it. And so I'm wondering at this point if he didn't just was like, you know what, I want to do this and I'm not going to talk to anybody else about it because they're going to try to talk me out of it. So fuck it. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to force everybody else to get on board with the plan. Kind of like I was talking about last episode. I think like maybe he's kind of figured out that he can force an issue. And then even after I'd recorded last week's episode, I had mentioned that I had hoped he would do the same thing for Afghanistan, and it looks like he is. So, again, kind of, it's all part of Libertarian Christmas. We're having Libertarian Christmas right now. It's a thing. You're welcome. But, yeah, it's just the troop pullout and the response to it has been disconcerting, to say the least. Little ugly, little nasty, little... I mean, I should have expected pushback, but not of the kind that we've seen, and not from the quarters in which I've seen it from. So, yeah. I guess the anti-war left was always full of shit. I guess. But another thing that I want to talk about before I leave out of this topic, and maybe I'm looking too much into this, but I started to wonder, like, if a lot of the opposition to pulling out of Syria is kind of not wanting to acknowledge the fact that, first of all, there were troops in Syria, which at this point you can't deny. I mean, it's obvious. Everybody knows this now. But then that leads to a very icky conversation for some people, especially people in the media who were very fond of our last president, who put the troops in Syria after he said he wasn't going to. So I'm wondering if a lot of this reaction, either consciously or subconsciously, isn't part of trying to protect Obama's legacy and kind of having to retroactively justify him putting troops in Syria by coming up with excuses for them to be there when they're not supposed to be there, and it's straight up illegal and unconstitutional for them to be there. Like I said, maybe I'm looking a little too far into it, but I think that might be something that needs to be unpacked and might explain a lot of this knee-jerk reaction. Like, of course, it's Trump derangement syndrome, but also that wanting to protect Obama's legacy and wanting to make excuses for what he did. And this is also not to say that Trump is now turned into some peacenik president who's going to pull us out of everywhere all over the planet. But it does kind of speak to something that a lot of people were kind of hoping for. And I think a reason a lot of people kind of held their noses and voted for Trump was that he would challenge this sort of status quo, especially as far as military engagement. And obviously this is a massive challenge to the status quo. I mean, he's pretty much unilaterally decided to pull troops out of Syria and Afghanistan. And then even going back before that to basically unilaterally deciding to have talks with North Korea, to have a summit with them. It's, like I said, I don't think that he's going to be the most, like, peaceful president ever, because, I mean, don't forget, there was a little mini ramp up in sending troops to Afghanistan earlier in his presidency, and he did drop Moab in Syria for no apparent reason. But this is progress, and I do think that even as shitty as Trump can be on so many other things, you do have to give credit where credit's due. And as far as fulfilling campaign promises, this is something that he did campaign on. He also campaigned on the wall, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I mean, it sucks to see people want to trash this solely because it's Trump doing it. Like, it's the right thing to do, no matter who is in the White House. Like, if by some bizarre twist of fate Hillary was in the White House and decided to do this same thing, I would praise her too, because it's something that needs to be done. You're bringing back troops from someplace they never fucking should have been. And I don't understand putting aside what is an obviously good idea and just trashing it for the sake of who's doing it. Like, I don't get that. Like, I don't get being that angry at somebody for, I mean, what the fuck ever reason they're angry at him for. I really don't. I don't know. Like, a lot of the TDS seems to be based on not substantive things he's done, but just the fact that he exists and he lives at 1600 Pennsylvania. I don't know. Anyway, somebody who was very, very mad about Trump's decision to pull troops out of Syria and Afghanistan was General Mattis, who was our Secretary of Defense until I think he's gone now, kinda. But let me back up and tell you what happened. So after Trump announced all this, General Mattis gave his letter of resignation. And I want to read you the letter because if Mattis wrote this is some of the most, like, crafty undercover shade I've seen in a long time. And I think it's important to know what's in the letter because then you can start to understand the events that have happened since the letter became public. So let me go ahead and read it to you. Actually, to try to keep this kind of brief, I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I'll give you the general gist of what the letter says up until the good part, which is basically, the normal pablum about how the U.S. is the world's great superpower and we must maintain our strategic alliances and blah, blah, blah. And we must make sure that our allies are happy and wonderful. And, oh my God, China, Russia, they're going to come in and take over everything if we're not there to stop them. Okay, now, to the shady part of the letter. Because you have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours on these and other subjects, I believe it is right for me to step down from my position. The end date for my tenure is February 28, 2019, a date that should allow sufficient time for a successor to be nominated and confirmed as well as to make sure the department's interests are properly articulated and protected at upcoming events, to include congressional posture hearings and the NATO Defense Ministerial meeting in February. Further, that a full transition to a new Secretary of Defense occurs well in advance of the transition of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in September in order to ensure stability within the department. Oh my God. Everybody shared this on social media because that is just straight up fucking shady. That's basically the most polite fuck you, I'm out I think I've ever seen in my life. But note that in his resignation letter, he had specifically said that his last day would be February 28th of next year. Well, what had happened was, obviously this letter got released to the public, the press started talking about it, and I guess finally Trump himself got around to actually reading the letter, because apparently he didn't read the letter until everybody else started talking about the letter. And then once he realized, kind of how bad the letter was and what Mathis was really trying to say in the letter, he basically decided on Sunday that, you know what, no, you're fired. You're fired, basically, is how that went down. But Trump didn't even say it. He sent Pompeo to go tell Mathis that you're out, go, pack your shit, get the hell on. And he named who was the Deputy Secretary of Defense to be the acting Secretary of Defense, whose name is Patrick Shanahan. And as far as anybody knows, he doesn't really have any government experience or military experience or much of any experience other than he worked for Boeing. Okay. Well, we'll see how that pans out. But like I said, he's another one in a long line of acting people in the White House right now, because, obviously you've got poor Mick Mulvaney now, who's now the acting chief of staff because John Kelly left, and now you've got an acting Secretary of Defense, and there's a couple of other actings floating around out there, and so it's all right, this White House cannot keep a staff for shit. And it's funny in the way of just watching it, but I guess it isn't funny in a way. But hey, it's chaos, and if anything, this is exposing just really how stupid the whole process is. And I kind of thought to myself the other day, it's why even bother nominating another Secretary of Defense if all you're going to do is, it's either you agree with Trump or you get the fuck out. Larry Kudlow has discovered ever since he took his job as economic advisor. It's you're there to agree with him, and if you don't agree with him, get gone. So why hire anybody? Why not just let it be Trump making all the decisions, because that's what it is anyway. But that happened. And so now everything is just in a state of chaos and confusion and disorganization, and oh my God, it's all gonna go to shit. And it's no, it's really not. It'll be all right. Everybody's gonna be okay. Whatever, the beat goes on. But while we're on the topic of beats going on, and actually beats that are not technically going on right now, we are officially in the midst of a partial government shutdown. As of midnight this past Sunday, we are in a partial government shutdown, and there have been negotiations since Saturday, going into Sunday, going into Monday, where I'm at now, Obviously, tomorrow there will no be negotiations because it is Christmas, and then they will pick it up again, I believe, on Thursday. But it is predicted at this point that this government shutdown will roll over into the next Congress that doesn't come in until January. So, as another part of Libertarian Christmas, we have a government shutdown. And just as a side note, Libertarian Christmas is wonderful. I mean, look at what we finally get to be happy for once. Like, we finally get to have what we wanted. Like, look, we're having troop withdrawals. We've got First Step passed. In the Farm Bill that just passed, which, yes, all farm bills are horrible, awful, shitty, pork-laden bills. Yes, I know. You don't have to tell me. But buried in there is the legalization of hemp. So now hemp can actually be used in an industrial capacity, and it has been pretty much legally, officially decoupled from marijuana. So, hooray for that. And let's see, am I forgetting anything? Let's see, we got the troop pullout, we got First Step, we got hemp, we've got a government shutdown, and we've also got the wall is now the Slats. Which, on that topic of the Slats, Trump tweeted out the other day a mock-up of what the Slats will look like. And this has got to be one of the funniest fucking pictures I've seen in a long time. Because here it is, like, okay, first of all, like, this picture looks like it was made in MS Paint. Like, whoever did the graphics on this sucks. But what it is it's like these steel beams, like steel slats, and you can, like, see in between them. Like, there's enough room in between them to where you can see, but not that a person can get through. But, like, the picture is of this wall of slats, and there's, like, a little, like, circular, like kind of not cutout, but like a representation up at the top of the picture to show you that the top of the slats are pointy. And then for, I guess, scale, I suppose, they have a little, like, Border Patrol SUV going along the bottom of the screen. Like, it's hilarious. Everybody has memed the hell out of this. Rand Paul memed the hell out of this in a tweet thread yesterday, which he did his annual Festivus tweet thread, but yesterday's was just like, that shit was out of control. Like, I don't know, did he, like, start drinking before he did that? But it's hilarious. Like, if you did not see it, go back on his TL. Hopefully it's still there. Hopefully he didn't erase any of it, because it is fucking hilarious. I mean, between making fun of Ted Cruz's beard and making fun of Lindsey Graham and just everything, it's hilarious. But that's where we are at now for everything that's happened since last Thursday. Like, I recorded that on a Thursday afternoon, and now it is a Monday afternoon, and all this other shit happened between then and now. So hopefully the news cycle will calm the hell down, at least long enough for us to celebrate Christmas without looking like a bunch of weirdos in front of our families, where we have to keep obsessively checking Twitter to make sure that, like, shit's not popping off and that there's nothing that we need to be addressing. Like, hopefully maybe we can have a calm day. I don't know. I'm recording this on Christmas Eve. Today was not a calm day on the Twitters. Trump was on one today, but that's kind of neither here nor there. Although, I don't know. I saw a story come down a little while ago saying that Trump is an Adderall freak, and I don't know. Today's tweets, they make the argument, I gotta say. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because, like I said, I do want to keep it short because obviously it is Christmas Eve and tomorrow will be Christmas Day, and I'm sure you guys do not want to listen to a long podcast. So let me go ahead and wrap this up here. And as always, if you did make it this far, thank you for listening. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.